Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something, well, paradoxical. It might even be curled up on your sofa right now. We're diving into the, frankly, wild story of how the African wildcat, this solitary, highly skilled hunter from the savannah, genuinely wary of humans, somehow became, well, the cat. Our most popular pet, a global icon. I mean, just look at your cat. Sleeping, purring, maybe plotting how to get snacks. That creature descended from Felis sylvestris lipica. Think grasslands, stealth, survival. How does that animal, territorial and frankly scared of us, become a fluffy roommate? That's the mystery we're digging into.
And it's a mystery where the clues totally rewrite the history books. We need to look past those classic images of, Egyptian cats on pyramids. Our mission today is to follow the evidence, the genetics, the archaeology that suggests something radical. Maybe we didn't domesticate the cat at all. It seems they might have, essentially domesticated themselves. They figured out how to hack living with humans. It's fascinating.
Okay, let's start with the ancestor then, the African wildcat. You said it's the original model for basically all our pet cats.
That's right. If you saw one, you'd recognize the cat shape, definitely. But the vibe, the build,
Yeah.
it's different. They're leaner, leggier, much more athletic. Built for hunting across Africa, the Middle East, Western Asia. Solitary hunters, masters of silence.
And for ages, everyone just assumed Egypt was ground zero for domestication. All those paintings, the statues, the cat mummies.
Correct. That was the standard story. Domestication happened around 3,600 years ago in Egypt, right before King Tut, roughly. The incredible cultural focus, the reverence, it just made sense that's where it all started.
But you're saying new evidence challenges that.
Oh, yeah.
It's significantly.
Oh, completely blows it up. The big one was a discovery back in 2004 in Cyprus. Archaeologists unearthed the human grave, and buried right alongside the person was a cat.
And the dating? It pushed the relationship back to 9,600 years ago.
Wait, 9,600 years? That's way before the pharaohs, almost 10,000 years. Exactly, it's a game changer. That find, plus genetic studies that came later, point towards the relationship starting thousands of years earlier. And not in Egypt, but further east, probably in the Fertile Crescent region. So the context shifts completely. It wasn't about Egyptian reverence initially. It was about farming.
Farming. Okay, so connect the dots. What was happening in the Fertile Crescent almost 10,000 years ago that would lure this shy wild predator towards people?
Well, that region, around that time, is where settled agriculture really took off. Humans stopped wandering, built villages, started growing crops, and crucially, they started storing grain. Lots of it. Wheat, barley.
Ah, okay. And stored grain means mice. Lots and lots of mice.
Precisely. Mice, gerbils, hamsters.
Yeah.
All the things African wildcats naturally hunt. Suddenly, near human settlements, there's this incredibly dense, reliable food source. It was like an evolutionary lottery win for the cats. An endless buffet, basically served up by humans, even if unintentionally. So this creates a kind of natural selection pressure. Which cats were going to benefit most? The ones that were maybe just a little less fearful of humans. The ones bold enough to sneak near the grain stores. They got more food. They were healthier. They probably raised more kittens who inherited that slightly bolder temperament.
That sounds so different from how we think dogs were domesticated. With wolves, it feels like humans were actively involved, right?
Yeah.
Picking the friendlier ones, breeding them for tasks.
That's the crucial difference. Yeah. Humans were very much the driving force behind dog domestication. We selected traits. We guided their evolution. With cats, humans were just part of the environment, a beneficial part, providing food indirectly. The cats essentially chose to hang around because it worked for them. It was purely advantageous for the cat. We didn't really get anything out of it initially, beyond maybe some accidental pest control.
Okay, so they move in, tolerate us because we mean easy food. But how do we get from that sort of wary cohabitation to, well, cuddly pets, the whole cuteness factor?
Well, that seems to be where the cat's own biology played a clever trick. It involves something called neoteny. Basically, domestic cats started retaining juvenile or kitten-like features into their adulthood much more than their wild cousins.
You mean like the bigger eyes, the rounder face, maybe even the playful behavior?
Exactly those things. Round eyes, shorter snout, those slightly clumsy, playful movements we find endearing. And from a human perspective, those features are powerful. They tap into our innate caregiving response, the same instincts that make us want to protect and nurture human babies.
So the cats literally evolved to look cuter to us, hacking our parental instincts.
It certainly looks that way. They kept the baby face, and we fell for it. But perhaps the most amazing hack wasn't visual, it was auditory. We need to talk about the meow.
The meow. I just assumed all cats meowed.
Get this. Adult wildcats don't meow at each other.
Not really.
For wildcats, meowing is strictly something kittens do to get their mother's attention, signal need. Domestic cats held on to that behavior. They kept the baby talk, but repurposed it specifically to communicate with humans. They generally don't meow at other cats, only at us.
Wow, okay, that's specific. So it became a tool just for interacting with humans.
And it gets even more specific. Research suggests that domestic cats often evolved to meow within the same frequency range as a crying human infant. They essentially tuned their vocalization to maximally trigger our ingrained response to a baby's cry. It's an incredibly effective way to solicit care, food, attention. And you see echoes of this in other behaviors too, like purring and kneading, when they make biscuits. Both seem to originate as nursing behaviors between a kitten and its mother. Purring signals contentment, kneading stimulates milk flow. But in domestic cats, these became adult behaviors primarily directed towards humans, signaling comfort or soliciting affection.
So these increasingly human-savvy cats then spread out, following humans, eventually reaching Egypt.
That seems to be the path. They followed human migration and trade routes across the Middle East, and eventually landed in Egypt maybe around 3,500 years ago, and that's where their public image just exploded.
Right, Egypt is where they went from useful pest control to gods, or at least divine symbols. Bastet, the cat goddess.
Exactly. Bastet, daughter of the sun god Ra. Cats became symbols of duality, the gentle companion, but also the fierce protector, reflecting their own nature. They were revered.
And the evidence for that reverence is overwhelming, isn't it? Laws against harming them and those incredible finds of cat mummies. Literally tons of them.
Huge numbers, yes. It shows how integrated they were into society. Though it's worth remembering some of those mummies might have been from temple breeding programs, possibly sacrificed. But the sheer volume points to widespread cat keeping. But importantly, let's look past the fancy statues. The genetic clues suggest these revered Egyptian cats weren't some exotic breed. They were likely, tabbies, striped tabbies looking much like your average modern-day alley cat.
Which makes sense if they were still largely domesticating themselves, right? So when did humans actually start deliberately breeding cats for specific looks, like Siamese or Persians?
Oh, incredibly late in the game. Compared to dogs, it's centuries later. Some early distinct types, like maybe the Siamese in Asia around the 14th century, probably arose through genetic drift in isolated populations. The Siamese look, for example, that pointed pattern, is a form of partial albinism, sensitive to temperature, likely developed because there weren't local wildcats to interbreed with, so the gene pool just drifted. It wasn't intentional human design.
So humans only really jumped into cat fancying, like in the 1800s, with cat shows and all that.
Pretty much. The focus on specific aesthetic traits, long hair, particular colors, patterns, really kicked off in Britain in the 19th century. The famous Crystal Palace Cat Show in 1871 is often seen as a key moment. And the goal was almost entirely looks, not function.
Which creates that weird paradox you mentioned. Dog breeds look wildly different because we bred them for different jobs, tiny terriers, giant rescue dogs.
Exactly. Massive genetic diversity driven by function. Cats, though. Despite all the different breeds, fluffy Persians, sleek Siamese, spotted Bengals, genetically, they're barely different from their wild ancestor, Felis sylvestris livica.
So it's mostly just a paint job. Underneath, there's still that efficient little hunter.
That's basically it. They are fundamentally the same stealthy, solitary predator, just wrapped in different packaging. And you even see humans trying to consciously reintroduce wild traits now, with breeds like the Bengal, which is a hybrid mix of a domestic cat, and the wild Asian leopard cat.
Which unfortunately brings us to the darker side of this story. Having this incredibly effective, barely changed wild predator living alongside us in the billions, what happens when they get outside?
Yeah, this is the serious consequence. When domestic cats are allowed outdoors, unsupervised, their natural hunting instincts take over. And the impact is devastating. They're directly implicated in the extinction of over 60 species worldwide: birds, mammals, reptiles.
The numbers are just hard to grasp. I read that in North America alone, outdoor cats are estimated to kill something like 2.5 billion birds every year.
It's staggering. That figure represents maybe 2/3 of all bird deaths from all causes in the region. And it's not just birds. Add maybe 10 billion small mammals, amphibians, reptiles to that toll annually. They are incredibly effective hunters, even well-fed ones. The instinct is just hardwired. And we see this playing out in conservation crises globally. Take the Scottish wildcat. The pure form is functionally extinct now, mostly replaced by hybrids with domestic cats, erasing unique evolutionary history. Or island ecosystems, where native birds often evolved with no land predators. Cats arriving there could be catastrophic. Australia is trying to manage millions of feral cats. New Zealand has its predator-free 2050 goal, which includes tackling feral cats.
So the takeaway from all this research really is pretty clear for pet owners, isn't it?
It has to be. Keeping cats indoors is vital for protecting wildlife, especially birds. And honestly, it's better for the cats too. Indoor cats live significantly longer, healthier, safer lives. They still get enrichment and love, just without decimating local ecosystems. And, the story isn't even finished. There's emerging genetic work hinting that maybe the very first cats attracted to those Fertile Crescent grain stores weren't even Felis sylvestris libica as we know it. Possibly a different, now extinct lineage, maybe initially used more for fur or even food rather than companionship. We're still waiting for more data, perhaps from Egyptian cat mummies, to clarify that early chapter.
Wow. So the journey is even more complex than we thought. From that lone savanna hunter, possibly through multiple interactions and species, to this global phenomenon. What are the estimates now? 600 million, a billion domestic cats worldwide.
Somewhere in that range, yeah. From useful neighbor to worshipped icon to beloved companion, and now also a significant ecological force. It's an amazing evolutionary story. It shows how powerful human presence is, but also how adaptable other species can be. The cat essentially engineered its own success by becoming indispensable and later irresistible to us.
Sometimes the best survival strategy in a human-dominated world is just weaponized cuteness.
It certainly works for the cat. Minimal genetic change, maximum global takeover.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the cat achieved this through self-domestication, relying on our infrastructure, what does that suggest about the future? Could other species follow a similar path, learning to thrive alongside us, perhaps in ways we don't even anticipate over the next, say, 10,000 years? Something to think about next time your cat demands dinner.